Hey folks, Nick here from another BookTube channel. Today, with my March 2024 wrap up, I had a pretty good month of reading. I think 8 books was my total. Let's see, one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, 8 finished, potentially 9, because I'm reading one right now that might spill over into April, which I'll talk about in the end. But I had 8 books finished and 4 graphic novels as well. Talk a little bit about each of those today. I started the month off. This is actually kind of cheating a little bit because I did start this in February, but finished it in March. That's The Shadow Rising by Robert Jordan, the 4th book in the Wheel of Time. I've posted my review of this already, and I loved it. This is my second time reading it. I'm doing a reread of The Wheel of Time right now, visiting it from a second time perspective, and it's really making the books a lot more enjoyable, at least these first 4. And I'm very curious to see how the remainder of the series holds up on the second time through, especially now that after book 4, we're kind of entering into that territory where everybody says, oh, it really starts to slow down. So let's see how much it really slows down, especially now that I know, what's relevant and what to look for, what's good, and all that. What else did I read? I read Tell Me I'm Worthless by Alison Rumfitt. I did post a review of this one as well. This is a very different book than I usually read, a lot more disturbing than I usually go for. This is a trans horror novel, and it's a really difficult book to talk about just kind of conversationally. I don't even know that I did a great job of expressing myself in that full video that I did. I will say, check out that video for the most complete thoughts I was able to put together on it. But yeah, it is a difficult read, but it was a great book. Might end up being near the top of my reads at the end of the year. So highly recommend that if you have the stomach for some really detailed, descriptive, gross horror books. On the complete other end of the spectrum, I've got Kurt Vonnegut, Galapagos. This was also a reread for me, but I did not remember this at all from my first time reading it, so it was kind of like a new book. This is probably mid to low range Vonnegut. Just like all of his other books, the plot is basically irrelevant, but for what it's worth, this is the story of how the human race ended up basically getting wiped out with only a few survivors left on the Galapagos Islands, and how they evolve over time. It's not a spoiler. That's just what it's about. Well, it's from the very beginning we know that's kind of what happens here. Just like any other Kurt Vonnegut book, the story doesn't matter so much as the coincidences along the way, the characters that he creates, and how their lives accidentally intermingle with each other to create this outcome that he tells you about up at the very start. So it's interesting. It's got some of the classic Vonnegut witticisms that you want to hear from him and that you expect from his writing, but it's just okay. It's very far from his best material. I read a couple of dog books. I read Fluke by James Herbert, which I liked quite a bit. That was a book told entirely from the perspective of a dog. A dog like from puppyhood up. And the hook is that the dog has very vague memories that he was perhaps once in the past a human being. So it's just kind of like his life from puppyhood, learning to be a dog, but also getting these flashes, these images once in a while of being a human, which also affects his. It gives him an extra leg up on other dogs. It makes him a little bit smarter. Really interesting. It's classified as a horror novel, but it's not at all. It's more of just kind of like a fantasy, I would say. But I enjoyed it, and I'm gonna do a video about it at some point. I'm gonna pair it with the other dog book that I read, which was Thor by Wayne Smith. This one was not from a dog POV. It's third person or third dog, but it is very much mostly following the thoughts and actions of this family dog named Thor, who is the only person of his family of humans that can detect that there's something wrong with their uncle that's visiting them. It's a really unique idea that that dogs can obviously sense things humans can't because of just the way that they are built and the way that their noses work and all that. They can sniff out danger. So interesting dynamic that like the family dog knows something's wrong, but he can't communicate it to the family. Um, Another really, really good book. Both of those dog books I managed to get through without crying, which is a really great accomplishment on my end, even though the dogs occasionally go through some tough times. So yeah, though I'm going to be doing a dog book video at some point in the future. There's one more dog book that I want to read that I'm going to do, include in that as well. Hellhound by Ken Greenhall. I need to get a copy of that, and once I do, I'm going to do a big dog video about all those books. What else? Let's switch gears to a graphic novel, Killing and Dying by Adrian Tomina. I absolutely freaking love Adrian Tomina. I've said it before. I think he's one of the best writers in the comic medium today. He's so special at just capturing all of life's disappointments and the things that just cause the minor issues that cause big problems between individuals in relationships and in friendships. And this is no different. This is a collection of stories. So there's a bunch of different plots here. A couple that I really liked was there's one called A Brief History of the Art Form known as Horticulture. And it's basically about this guy who is a gardener and gets it in his mind that he's going to create a new art form called horticulture that combines horticulture and sculpture, as the name implies. But he's really bad at it. But it's something that he gets really like pretentious about, and his wife tries to be supportive, but she does it in like the wrong ways, like to him. Like it doesn't help him. He always feels like she's talking down to him, or she doesn't really believe in him, and it just causes this, these problems in his life over many years. It's a short story, but it covers several years of his life, and it has a lot to say about people, about artists and failing as an artist. It's really interesting and insightful. The title story, Killing and Dying, is about this teenage girl who's very awkward, who just tells her parents that she wants to become a stand-up comedian, and she's not very good at it, and it's another one of those situations where she wants to put herself out there, try this art form, but she's not good at it. So the parents want to be supportive, but they also want to try to protect her from the fact that it might not work out. So and they have to have those conversations of like, have a backup plan. We support you. We think you can do it, but also, you might not be able to. So all those uncomfortable conversations are present, and it's just really sweet. It's a classic Adrian Tomina storytelling. I love it. Loved every moment of this book. Highly recommend it. What else? Oh, let's do another graphic novel. Pestilence by Frank Thierry and Oleg Okunev. This is a comic published by Aftershock. I'm not super familiar with them. This was okay. Honestly, it got kind of boring about midway through. So this is essentially the Black Plague. The Black Plague from the Crusade times or whatever. What if the Black Plague was actually a zombie outbreak? That's essentially it. And this is about a group of like Crusade knights who are like a black ops team who have to rescue the Pope in the middle of the zombie outbreak. It sounds like an interesting idea. It actually, in the introduction, they mentioned it was supposed to be a video game. Maybe it would be a fun video game, but just okay. Artwork was fine. Um, Writing was honestly kind of tedious. So don't know that I would recommend this one. Didn't really work for me. Switch on back to prose. I've got Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Child of the Hunt by Christopher Golden and Nancy Holder. This was good. I've been having a lot of bad luck with the Buffy books so far, but this is the first one in that series that I've read that is like for adults. It's not a young adult novel, so it actually reads like a novel that I'm used to, and it's pretty good. I think it captures the voices of the characters pretty well. It is the story is a little bit maybe unwieldy. I think there's a little bit too much going on. There's like a Renaissance fair that comes to town. There's also, but in the Renaissance fair, like there's something magical and weird going on there that's evil. There's also the wild hunt, like the Norse mythology wild hunt coming through Sunnydale, and there's also this subplot about runaways, like just teen and child runaways in Sunnydale, and they all kind of connect, but it just feels like there's a little bit too much going on. But it's fun. It's I like Christopher Golden and Nancy Holder. I think they have a pretty good grasp on the way the characters are supposed to speak and the type of action it's supposed to be. Um, but just okay. A book that I loved, and I do have a video on this up already as well. That's King's Ransom by Ed McBain. Check out my full video about this where I talk about this and its movie adaptation, High and Low, by Akira Kurosawa. I also found out after I filmed that Spike Lee is currently in the process of doing his own King's Ransom. It's a remake of High and Low. This is absolutely terrific. I think this is the best plot of a crime thriller I've ever read. Paring it down to its basics, would you basically bankrupt yourself to pay the ransom to save a child that's not yours? There's a lot more to it than that, but just that central idea, so strong, so full of drama, so interesting. Another graphic novel, Hellboy: The Conqueror Worm by Mike Mignola. I really like the Hellboy comics. I do primarily like them for the artwork. I'm gonna be honest, I don't remember the Hellboy stories from book to book that I read. There are characters that I forget exist. Like the continuity is really not something I pay attention to, but I love Mike Mignola's artwork. And you don't need to really pay attention to the continuity, honestly. The stories work as a standalone, even though they're they can sometimes be also a little tricky to follow. I'm not even going to try to tell you what this one's about. I've already kind of forgotten. But the art's beautiful, and I really loved it. And I do highly recommend Hellboy for true appreciators of the visual storytelling art form of comics. Alrighty, another prose book, Where He Can't Find You by Darcy Coates. This was really good until it kind of wasn't. This is a supernatural serial killer book, which starts off really, really strong. It's a small town, and I think like Illinois or something, that has been haunted by a serial killer for like a century, called the Stitcher. And people go missing, and then their bodies will show up, weeks or months or years later, and they'll be stitched back together in these horrible ways with red thread. And so it's about this group of teenagers who are trying to just stay alive and avoid being captured by the Stitcher. And of course, one of them gets taken, so the rest of them have to go and try to rescue them. Really solid setup. The tension's really strong. A lot of great spooky scenes in here. I will say that it does have the similar problem of a lot of mystery books, where once the mystery is solved, it's kind of like, And the mystery was a lot more fun when it was a mystery. I don't think there's a way around that. I mean, it's very hard for particularly like a monster or a serial killer book to maintain that interest after the big reveal. But this was a pretty good one, honestly. It wasn't bad. I was also surprised. This is apparently considered a YA book. It was classified as such on Storygraph, and I see that it's Sourcebooks Fire published, who I looked up, and they publish young adult fiction. This honestly, it reads just like any other Darcy Coates book. It just so happens that the characters were all teenagers. So, I mean, do with that what you will. I think it reads pretty well, and not just for young adults. The last book that I have finished as of this recording is The Crow Special Edition by James O. Barr. This one I've also got. I think I've got a video coming out on this one. I'm doing a full book review of this one, not a comic read along. But there's been a lot of talk about The Crow, at least recently, because that new movie's coming out. Whether you think that trailer looks good or not, it's brought The Crow back into conversation. So this is my first time reading it, and I really enjoyed it. I think the backstory behind why the book came about is really sad and changes the context of the actual work itself. Again, check out that full video once I have it up, for my full thoughts where I go through, and I also show some of the panels on the inside as well, some pages that stood out to me. But this was cool. If you're like me and you were an emo kid in high school, then you're gonna like The Crow for sure. And the book that I'm reading now, that's probably, I might finish it before April, but maybe not, is book 5 of The Wheel of Time, The Fires of Heaven. I've just started it pretty early on, but I'm going to try to finish it before April. So I'm just going to count it here. And yeah, so not super far into it. I'm enjoying it. It's definitely not the most riveting start of the books that I've read so far. But I don't remember really what happens in this one. This is one that kind of faded from memory. So happy, excited to revisit it and see what it has in store. And yeah, that is it for what I read in March. Looking forward to April. I don't know that I have any specific plans. More 87th Precinct, maybe another Expanse book, maybe another Buffy book. Who knows? Honestly, I'm not sure. Let me know what you read in March that you really, really enjoyed. Let me know what you're looking forward to in April. Thank you very much for spending some time with me today. But now it's time to get back to reading.